Yeah, this one, you can't tell. It's sort of a hard cardboard. I guess it would actually be a broadside that would be put up. But a promotional poster. And you'll see here it's from his 41st season. And here's their rule of thumb: merit, not sympathy, wins. That's sort of their promotional pitch. Miss Day, a vocalist, and John M. Day was the manager at that time. So, just another document, but a broadside. This is one of my favorites.
This is the diary of Henry Fike, a resident of Warrensburg, Missouri, who kept diaries for most of his life. This is a passage from April 9th, 1918. It's the 9th, it's a Tuesday, and he writes, "Quite a frost this morning. The thermometer stood at 34 at daylight. A strong east wind all day, chilly. Billy Boone, the blind pianist I have known from childhood, called on us this morning. He played several pieces for us. He was born in Miami, Missouri, May 17, 1864, but was principally brought up in Warrensburg. His mother worked for us for 26 years in various kinds of work." And so you have a piece of someone's recollection of actually listening to Blind Boone, a personal friend of his, discussing his piano playing on a visit to his home in Warrensburg in 1918.
So here's another Boone document. I think it's from the Ellie Fike collection. And we have some of her diaries and also her father's diaries, I believe. But this is, it's a promotional flyer from one of his early tours. And as it says up here, the greatest natural musician living who, as yet, has only been introduced in 8 states, is being introduced in this state, and as per dates on lithographs. Up top, it's sort of, sign of the times, but it reads, "That wonderful freak of nature, the musical prodigy of the 19th century, the young Negro." Anyway, one of the more interesting documents for me, just multicolors, and 1884 is the date we've come up with. But I guess it was definitely, one of his early tours. He'd only been in 8 states at that point.
This is the photograph collection of the State Historical Society, a portion of the collection that focuses on John William Blind Boone. The Society is really lucky in having a rather extensive collection of images and artifacts related to Boone, both here at the Society and at our sister organization, Western Historical Manuscripts. We have images. Most of the time when you see a photograph of Boone, it would come from one of our collections. And here he is playing piano in his house on 4th Street in Columbia, Missouri. We have a couple pictures of his home. Here he is with his wife, Eugenia. This was taken shortly after they were married. And we have many pictures of Boone with his manager, John Lang. Lang was a very astute entertainment manager. He was known as one of the best of his time, black or white. He was one of the best managers, and quite often you'll see promotional material on Boone. Here's a card that shows them sort of in their traveling gear on the road, and this was published by the Kansas City Sun, and it talks about not only the popularity of Boone as an entertainer, but also the fact that these are generous and kind-hearted men. And I thought that was a really interesting observation to put on a card like that. There's also one that shows Lang and Boone and Ruth Lang and their chauffeur outside the Lang home in Kansas City. And before he was Boone's manager, John Lang was a public contractor here in Columbia, and he worked on a lot of the roads. He was self-educated. He didn't learn to read until after he became Boone's manager. But he really had a head for numbers, and quite often In a lot of their advertising, he'll state how many miles they had covered in their career, how many days they were on the road, and a lot of statistics, which is really interesting. How many hours Boone rehearsed, how many piano professionals he listened to acquire new music. And on the back here you see a photograph of Boone with his wife Eugenia and John Lang with his wife Ruth. The women, both women, toured with the company, Eugenia serving as the company treasurer for a while and Ruth as its secretary until things really got rolling. They also became part of the support network on Boone. And here's another really popular picture that you see often of Boone, and he's got his watch chain and his medal. This medal, which you often see Boone wearing in photographs, was given to him by John and Ruth Lang. Up at the top it says, "Blind Boone, champion pianist of the world." And it was presented to Boone on the occasion of his birthday, May 17, 1887. And this one here, which is also signed on the back, "Yours fraternal, Boone." Now this would not be Boone's signature. He didn't write. He signed his QRS contract with an X, but somebody has signed it for him, and it was given to North Todd Gentry, a very prominent Colombian at the time, and I'm not sure if possibly they were both Masons, so that could be the reference to "Yours fraternal." Boone just loved secret organizations and belonged to several of them, and we have this purse that came from the Boone estate, and unfortunately we don't have a lot of information on that purse, but someone has mentioned that they thought it was a fraternal purse. Mohip Theater uses a lot of primary resources to create its plays, and we are lucky to have one of the few biographies, the only biography written in his life of John Boone, which is this book, Blind Boone, His Early Life and His Achievements, by Miss Melissa Fuel from 1915. Melissa Fuel, who's pictured here, traveled with Boone as a singer and also as support staff. Here she's listed as assistant to Boone's manager. She graduated from Lincoln University and taught for a while. Highly educated woman, and she wrote Boone's life story after years of knowing both him and Lang, and a portion of this is also dedicated to John Lang. And if it were not for this book, very little history would really survive about Boone's life, and a lot of what you find today springs from this book, including our play on Nobody Plays Like Boone. Before the days of television and radio, one of the quickest ways for a word to get out about concerts was word of mouth, and one of the ways that really shows John Lang's astuteness as a promoter was the use of Ed the Parrot. Ed was owned by Mrs. Ruth Lang. He'd been given to her as a present from John Lang, and traveled with them in the early days when they both went on tour with the Blind Boone Company. And John Lang would notice that when they walked down the streets of town with Ed the Parrot, the children of the town would gather around to look at Ed. Ed was the fascination, and then at the time they would tell the children that Ed was in town because there was going to be this concert that night. And sometimes they would tell them Ed would sing, and the children would run around the town telling everyone about this concert where there would also be this parrot that was going to sing, and they'd beg their parents to come. And so their parents would bring them to the concert, and of course, as a parrot, Ed did not sing, but Boone played. And quite often nobody cared that Ed didn't sing. By the end of the evening, they were all just enchanted with Boone's performance. But on one occasion, the lady did come up and say, well, we were kind of disappointed that Ed didn't get a chance to sing. And Ed told everyone that he was tired. That was Ed's excuse for not singing. He was tired. He didn't want to. Ed was the talking parrot.